Okay, Dad. Tell us a little. So you left Oxford in 1954, was it, or 55?
55.
What happened then?
I was sent a couple of weeks before, or a month before, coming down from Oxford. All students were invited to the headquarters of the placement agency for Oxford, which found jobs for students. And you could register there if you didn't. You could find your own job if you wanted, but it was convenient to register there. And when they had notice of requirements by large companies like Unilever, Shell, and so forth, they would send you a letter saying, "We've got this. Why don't you apply for this?" They gave you the telephone number, the address to write to, etc. We didn't have email then, but we did have the other form of transmitting.
Telegram.
Yeah. But it was mostly done by mail, post. I signed up with the University Appointments Board, and in due course got a letter inviting me, if I wanted to apply for a job in any company I named. I applied for a job, a general traineeship in any large company. So the Appointments Board would give you a status according to a report from your college on your record, assiduity, sportsmanship, etc. Then with their sponsorship, you could write for an interview and go up. Before that, however, no, sorry, I'm mixing my memories here. I was rowing from the beginning at Oxford, from the first term, in fact, which was a torpid. I got into the first torpid, which was about 8th on the river. There were bumping races, and I rowed through that, practiced a lot every day just to get fit. I was pretty fit anyway from the army.
Okay, we talked about that last time.
That's right. So what you wanted me to talk about was...
Well, we'll try and take it chronologically. We've covered Oxford, we've covered rowing, and now the next period of your life after Oxford.
After Oxford.
So you got TB and your first jobs, you were working as a...
from Oxford, I applied to the BBC for a job. The BBC had 2 major traineeships, just so-called general traineeships, and I thought I'd quite like to get into broadcasting, so I applied for one of those. Didn't get it, but I had an answer from the Appointments Board of the BBC asking me if I would like to join as a studio manager. The studio manager was another name for the broadcast engineer who put the programs on the air and did all the plugging in and gramophone record playing and all that went with every production that was broadcast. And so I accepted that traineeship and joined the BBC as a program engineer, with a posh name of what I've just said. We had a room this was before television broadcasting. Television was on the horizon. It had arrived in America, and we knew it was going to arrive in the UK, but I didn't have many desires to be a television man. I just wanted to be in a prestige job at the BBC. We had a club room in Broadcasting House. Spent a lot of our time there waiting for the next program. Had every day on a notice board, our name was set against what we would be doing and what program we would be working on that day, like Graham's Woman's Hour, 2 o'clock. And then you turn up at Studio 5B. You then turn up at Studio 5B just before 2 o'clock. Program was on there at 2:30. You switched all the electricity on, made sure everything was ready for the little attendant bits of broadcasting, like car door slamming, makes of car. I remember you had to fill a form in, and you would go down saying, I want, on the list you would say, I would like a door being smashed down in a church, 1, 2, a door opening in a car, 3, a car starting up, 4, a car driving away, all these. And then there was a person in the department that would look to see which required grams, because some of these effects were done on the spot. You had a slab of concrete actually in the broadcast studio with a microphone, one of those big biscuit microphones set up on the floor in front of it, and then you could do you could walk on it scraping your feet, you could tap it, you could make any noises that were required in the course of the program. I worked quite a lot in Children's Hour, and I can remember sitting next to Uncle Mac. Forgotten his real name, but he was the benign compere of Children's Hour, which was a big, famous program. Went on the air at 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the afternoon after school. I remember sitting. On his right, I was in a low chair on his right, he was in a high chair on my left. And I didn't say much to him, but we were a team, you know. And I felt part of the broadcast. Then, so far as gramophone records were concerned, I would go, let's say, 11 o'clock in the morning, having talked to the producer of the show, having got all the needs for noise effects and so forth, I decided which noises I could make on my own in the studio, and then those for which I needed a gramophone record. In the gramophone department, they would go through what your list. For example, I would say, car starting up, car driving away. What sort of car? I would say an Austin 7. And, having checked with the producer, Austin 7, do you want it revving up hard? Do you want to hear the brakes squeak? Do you want to hear the wheels whir as it leaves? Yes, yes, no, yes. And then they'd give you a precise recording of that, written on a 78 record, revolving at 78 revolutions a minute. And you would set it up. Have I told you this before?
No.
You had in the actual control box, there was a desk facing a big window that looked in on the studio. So the producer sat at the desk, and operated the knobs, in a panel in front of him or her, and had an assistant on the right or on the left. And then, especially as the effects man, I would be walking around, plugging things in, getting all the electricity right. And I'd come back, let's say, and I'd consult the producer, and I'd say, I'd set up the Austin 7080 RPM record, which was a soft record. It would only do one specific sharp recording. From then on, it was rehearsal recording. And I would just turn the record over till I found the noise I wanted, like, and then I would hear it, stop the parallel track needle, an ordinary gramophone needle, and then wind with my hand, wind the track back. It would revolve it clockwise, and then revolve the disc anti-clockwise, and it would go. I'd hear the groaning as the needle jumped around. And then when I found the sound, the beginning of the sound, I'd stop the thing, record, wind on one more revolution, put the parallel track needle above it, and then switch it on, watch it turn one revolution, stop it with my thumb, switch it off, and then put the needle directly above where I wanted to record.
Were you recording from a library of records?
Yes.
Onto master
onto a master
for that particular broadcast.
For that particular broadcast, and then they would call in the record after the broadcast and reuse it for rehearsal purposes. And they were 16-inch broad discs on special players.
This would be a collection of sound effects,
yeah,
which you'd organised beforehand. And
that's right.
Played it during the actual.
Yeah, and make sure that it was on time. Right. Make sure that it was, if there was a play, and there was a knock on the door, I would be in the studio with a big, and I'd go tock tock on I'd have a piece of wood, knock knock knock, and the voice would say yes, and I'd then switch. I would knock. I do this in the studio. Knock, knock, knock. I'd be in front of my thing. Yes, and then I'd just switch the disc on and lower it, and there would be a tremendous splinter and crash on it, and that would be breaking the door down.
Right. There was enormous scope for getting it wrong, right?
Yeah. In fact, and there were monitors. There were quality control people listening 24 hours a day to everything that was broadcast. And if you went wrong, one of the worst things was to wow it. So wowing was when you had to turn the disc, and you put the needle in too soon, and it would go up to speed and then play. One of the worst faults was wowing. If you did it twice or three times, they'd bump you off the program and you'd go on to something else. Wow. So you had to be. I was aware, and all the studio managers were aware that the performance was being closely monitored at all times.
Right. And did you ever get anything wrong?
I don't think I ever got it really. I wowed once or twice, or at least the end of a wow, and the voice would come over. Was that a wow? In the control panel, and the producer would say, "It's all right, thanks." Turn up, So I mostly got away with it. I got on well with the producers.
So you were on a children's program, and what else were you on?
Woman's Hour was a big one, 2:30 every day. And that, I think, is because probably the producer fancied me a bit, And so she asked for me to be on her show. We never made anything of it. It was only a hi, nod, and that was it. But you know, there were little currents of affection and dedication and favoritism all the time flowing around, because it was a sensitive job and changing every minute.
Did you? What was Len doing at this time?
He went straight into advertising, Gray's, and he joined because Gray, fairly minor agency, but an offshoot of an American agency, was just building up a television department. So he was taken on as a trainee television producer at Gray. And he never got out of the advertising agency, whereas I was out of advertising until I was 32. That is, I left Oxford when I was...
At 55, you said, you were 32 in 1964.
Yeah.
So you had 9 years when you were not doing advertising.
That's right. And when I got into advertising, in my first year, I did the Schweppes campaign, the You Know Who.
Do you want to... Sorry, we're still at the BBC. Let's not jump, okay?
Okay.
How many years were you at the BBC then?
About 4 years. I did my training. I think they allowed me 3 years to qualify. I qualified, and that was a verbal examination in a spare studio by the personnel director. If you failed, you were set back and had to wait another 6 months or something. But I got through without feeling in competition. And I think that was my main mental attitude. It wasn't, I want this job next. It was, oh yeah, well, that's the next job. Okay, fine. Because I accepted everything as a new experience and enjoyed it.
So you didn't aim for some goal?
No, I had no goal. My goal was to get into broadcasting. And the BBC was the biggest broadcaster. There was another station in Radio Luxembourg that did pop music. And when I was later on in a record company, Palette Records, I visited the DJs in Luxembourg, got on with them. But as I say, I stress at this point that I didn't feel an overall ambition. I didn't want to be the head of the head of the BBC, for example.
Did you want to carry on working as an engineer, studio manager, or did you want to move into drama?
Eventually I wanted to go in drama, and because that had been my interest at Oxford. I was, together with Len, we designed and wrote and designed the publicity for the Oxford University Dramatic Society. So we had a record of doing drama at Oxford, amongst quite a lot of other things.
Did you want to write plays, or did you want to produce them?
No, I didn't think of writing. All I wanted was to be a filmmaker, let's say. If that involved film writing, it would involve film writing. I think it would just pop up in front of my head and I would do it.
You wanted to be a film director?
I would have, yes. Being a film director was part of it, because Len and I had helped to direct a couple of Oxford University Dramatic Society productions. So, although I didn't think of myself as an expert director, I did have ideas about how people on the stage should behave.
Did you have a favourite work of art, book or film, or something that you wanted to emulate or work towards that as a role model?
From the early days, I remember I wanted to do a film of Gawain and the Green Knight, because that was a blend of fantasy, romantic, and had a mystery and a dilemma and a location, that is the Welsh Marches, the broad strip of land on the either side of the Severn River that travelled up country to the Wirral Peninsula and then on to Preston and Blackpool. Blackpool was in my head, of course, because it must have been in the early 30s. I was old enough to ride a donkey anyway. In the early 30s, we were taken to a boarding house for 1 week by Mum and Dad. And so we had our week in Blackpool holiday, which in fact was quite privileged because a lot of people weren't rich enough to afford a week's holiday. And Dad could afford it, or at least made an effort, and often with a family, with Uncle Howard and his daughter and wife.
So you were drawing on your background, your childhood in a way, as
Yeah,
part
that's
of your
right. Yeah.
aspirations. Okay, we've got to wind up here. So just say, how did you? We'll call this the BBC chapter. How did you end up leaving the BBC? Sacked.
My training was up, and Len said, why don't we, he was only just across the road in Gray's Advertising from Broadcasting House, so we met quite often and had meals quite often, but he said, let's try and do something in the theatre. I applied I wanted more money, so I applied for a traineeship in the Rank Organisation, which was a big English filmmaking company based in London, Heath Street, with an office there. And in fact, I went along and had an interview, and I got a job, traineeship, with the Rank Organisation. So I was putting myself in the way of making films.
And what year was this?
1956.
Right.
A year or two, no. 1950, no.
You finished Oxford 55.
Yeah,
You were
55.
3 or 4 years with the BBC.
This would be about 59, 58, 59.
Okay. All right, we'll end there. Good.